talk about the leading cause of distraction. The leading cause of distraction is not what is happening outside of us, because what I discovered in my 5 years of research is that most distraction begins from within. We call these internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable emotional sensations that we seek to escape from. You see, in fact, all human behavior, everything you do for only one reason: the desire to escape discomfort. In fact, even the desire to feel pleasure is itself psychologically destabilizing. This is called the homeostatic response. If you think about it, if you go outside and it's cold, well, the brain tells you, ooh, this is uncomfortable, you should put on a coat. When you walk back inside, the brain says, oh, it's too hot in here, take it off. If you feel hunger pangs, you eat. If you're full because you ate too much, you stop eating. And so physiologically, everything we do is about a desire to escape discomfort. This is called the homeostatic response. It's pretty common sense. But what most people don't realize is that the same phenomenon occurs with our psychological sensations. Think about it. Where do people go when they're feeling lonely? Well, you check a social network like Facebook. And what about when you're uncertain? Before you scan your brain to see if you know the answer, you're Googling. And what about when you're feeling bored? Oh my goodness, so many solutions to boredom, right? Check the news, check stock prices, sports scores, Pinterest, Reddit, all kinds of solutions to take care of this uncomfortable sensation of boredom, because we don't like those internal triggers. They don't feel good, and we look for escape from them. Time management is pain management. If you don't understand what is that emotional itch, what is that uncomfortable sensation you are looking to escape, whether it's with too much news, too much booze, too much football, too much Facebook, it doesn't matter. We have to first start by mastering these internal triggers so that we can gain control over them as opposed to them controlling us. The study of what people will do when they feel boredom is fascinating. In fact, a study by Timothy Wilson at Harvard found that a significant proportion of people would rather shock themselves with an electrical shock they were told would be painful than to sit alone in a room and feel boredom. Now, this study reveals to us that there are steps that we will take to try and avoid this uncomfortable sensation, that we would rather have some kind of stimulus than to be stuck alone feeling this uncomfortable emotional itch. So what this tells us is that we have to find ways to cope with discomfort in a healthier manner, because many of us, when we feel bored, lonesome, indecisive, fatigued, uncertainty, we reflexively look for some kind of escape, whether that escape is by turning on the television or checking our phones or doing something to take our mind off of that discomfort. Instead, what we can do is we can use those internal triggers, those uncomfortable emotional sensations, as rocket fuel to move us forward towards traction, as opposed to trying to escape them with distraction. How can we do that? Well, we have to start with understanding that feeling bad is not bad. I think that there's a very popular myth in the self-help community these days that somehow if we feel any kind of emotional discomfort, we have to escape it as quickly as possible. That if we feel lonesome or bored or indecisive or anxious or fatigued or stressed, God forbid we should have to feel those sensations. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. That the default human condition is not to be perpetually happy, to be always contented, quite the opposite. Our default state is perpetual disquietude, is always wanting more. And if you think about it, what drives entrepreneurs, artists, politicians, what drives people to change the world is this uncomfortable desire for more, to do something better. That's what has always driven our species forward. And if you can harness that discomfort and use it to your advantage, this is how we get ahead. This is how we make the world a better place, by understanding that discomfort and dealing with it in a healthy way, as opposed to trying to escape it with distraction in an unhealthy manner. We cannot call something a distraction unless we know what it is distracting us from. Let me say that again. You can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. And so if you don't plan your day, somebody is going to plan it for you. The social media companies, the news, your boss, your kids, somebody is going to take up that time in your day unless you decide in advance, how you want to spend your time. There's a reason we call it spending time and paying attention. The same type of language that we use to describe spending money and paying with dollars and cents, because our time and attention has value. And so if you just give it away to whoever wants it, don't complain when you haven't gotten done what you wanted to do with your time and, frankly, with your life. So this comes down to turning our values into time. What does that mean? Values are attributes of the person you want to become. Meaning, you have to ask yourself, how would the person I want to become spend their time? Now we can ask ourselves within these 3 life domains of you, your relationships, and finally your work, how would the person I want to become spend their time, starting with you? So whatever's important for you in terms of personal values, how much time would the person you want to become spend on reading, on yoga, on prayer, on meditation, whatever it is that's important to you, but plan that time in your schedule. Next, our relationships. We are going through a global loneliness crisis, because over the past several decades, and this didn't start with social media, but since the 1990s, social scientists have told us that the time that people devote to planned activities with their friends has markedly decreased. And so we can bring that back. We can make sure that we spend time with our friends, loved ones, and family members by putting time for it in our schedule. If part of your value system involves being a devoted spouse or a loving parent or an available sibling, do you have that time to connect with the important people in your life scheduled and held on your calendar? And then finally, when it comes to our values around our work, you see, work is split up into 2 kinds of work. We have what we call reactive work and reflective work. Reactive work is how most people spend most of their time at work. It's responding to emails, answering phone calls, messages, Slack notifications, reacting to what other people want you to do with your time. Now, that time is clearly part of many people's jobs, but what we neglect to do is to carve out and protect time for reflective work. Listen, if you want a leg up on the competition, if you want to do your job better than anyone else can, let me give you a little secret. Make time to think. You know why? Because it's such a rare skill. Nobody's doing it. Nobody's making time in their day to work without distraction, to allow you the time to reflect, to plan, to strategize. You have got to have that time held and secured on your calendar. One of the things I learned over the past 5 years of researching the psychology of distraction is that distraction is not a new thing. Facebook and the internet and the iPhone didn't invent distraction. In fact, Plato, the Greek philosopher, talked about distraction over 2,500 years ago. He called it akrasia in the Greek, the tendency that we have to do things against our better interests. And Plato wondered, why is it that despite knowing what to do, we don't just do it? And if this was difficult in Plato's day, it's even more baffling today. In previous generations, people could say, well, I don't know what to do. I don't have access to the information to tell me some kind of secrets. But there are no secrets. Who doesn't basically know how to lose weight? You have to eat right and exercise. Who doesn't basically know how to improve your work performance? You have to do the work, especially the hard stuff that other people don't want to do. Who doesn't know that to improve our relationships with our family and loved ones, we have to be fully present and invest in those relationships? We already know this stuff. What we don't know is how to stop getting in our own way. How do we stop getting distracted? You see, there are typically 2 types of people when it comes to dealing with distraction. We have what we call the blamers and the shamers. The blamers blame things outside themselves. It's Facebook, it's my boss, it's the modern world these days that makes me so distracted and unable to accomplish my goals. And then you have the shamers. The shamers, they don't blame things outside themselves, they shame themselves. And here's what it sounds like. This is what I used to do all the time. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I'm not very good at focusing. Maybe I have an addictive personality. Maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. There I go again, doing this thing that I said I wasn't going to do. Once again, there's probably something broken in my brain. And that's almost never the case. Both techniques are not very effective. The blamer blames things outside of themselves that they have virtually no control to change. We can't go back into some time machine before these technologies existed. And even if we could, there was no magical time without distraction. The shamers really harm themselves with that mindset because the more shame we feel, the worse we feel. And ironically, when we feel shame, a very uncomfortable emotion, many people escape that sensation with, guess what? More distraction to take their mind off of how crummy they feel about themselves. So we don't want to be blamers. We don't want to be shamers. We want to be what we call claimers. Claimers claim responsibility not for how they feel. This is a really important point. Most people don't realize you cannot control your feelings. You can only control how you respond to those feelings. That the reason we get distracted, the reason we procrastinate, it's not a character flaw. There's nothing wrong with you. It's simply that you don't have the tools to deal with those uncomfortable feelings in a healthy manner to lead you towards traction rather than distraction. You see, many things in the world these days are not your fault. You didn't invent Facebook. You didn't invent social media. You didn't create what's happening in the news today. These things aren't your fault. But managing your response to the discomfort that you feel every day that can lead you towards distraction is your responsibility. So calling yourself indistractable doesn't mean you never get distracted. That's impossible. The difference between an indistractable person and a distractible person is that an indistractible person understands why they got distracted and has the tools to do something about it. You know, there's a wonderful Paulo Coelho quote. He said, "A mistake repeated more than once is a decision." If we keep getting distracted by the same stupid things day after day, week after week, month after month, we are choosing to be distractible. An indistractible person looks at why they got distracted with this methodology I've developed and understands the source of the problem to make sure that they don't keep getting distracted by doing something today to prevent getting distracted tomorrow. Many people will classify distraction as certain behaviors. Playing on a video game, that's bad, that's distracting, but doing your work is somehow good. But that can't be right. I would argue that any action can be either traction or distraction, whether it's something we do with intent, with forethought. So for example, if you sit down at your desk and guide your work life based on what's on your to-do list, you're going to have a penchant for doing the things that are urgent, easy, or fun, as opposed to doing the stuff that's actually important. You see, distraction tricks us by us thinking that what we're working on is what we think we should be doing, checking email, Slack notifications, whatever it is that seems like a work-related task. What we're doing is allowing distraction to trick us into doing what I call pseudo work. These things that we feel like we're being productive by doing these work-related tasks, but if it's not what we plan to do with our time, working on that big report, finishing that proposal, whatever the case might be, not doing the work we're avoiding, that is in fact a more dangerous, insipid form of distraction because we don't even realize we're getting distracted. So there's a technique called progressive extremism that can really be a useful tactic if you're trying to change your life in a positive manner. And this acknowledges the fact that temporary fixes are pointless. What's the point of getting in shape by going on some kind of fad diet so you can fit in your wedding dress for just one day if you're not maintaining a healthy lifestyle forever? The point of getting in shape is to have the benefits for the rest of your life. So instead of having some kind of crash diet, which we know people tend to bounce back from and with a vengeance, instead what we want to do is to train ourselves with this technique called progressive extremism. What does progressive extremism mean? Progressive extremism means that we are going to remove some kind of unhealthy behavior in our life for the rest of our lives, but we're going to do it in a very small way. Here's how it works. So for me, when I decided I wanted to eat less processed sugar, I didn't say, that's it, I'm never touching processed sugar ever again. Instead, what I said was, I am going to cut out one food that's high in sugar for the rest of my life, but it has to be easy. The first food I started with was candy corn. Now, I don't know if you like candy corn. I don't really like candy corn all that much. You know, I would eat it kind of on Halloween when my daughter would bring it back from trick-or-treating. It's kind of the dregs of the Halloween haul. And so I decided one year, you know what? I'm eating these things not because I like them, but because they're just here. Well, they're never going to be here ever again. And so I pledged to myself, I'm never going to eat another candy corn for the rest of my life. No big deal. I didn't really like them to begin with. And then I was ready to do a bit more, right? To progress. So the next thing I said I'm not going to eat ever again was I excised sodas, sugary sodas in the house. Now, I told myself I could drink sugary sodas outside the house, just not in the house. That was the first tiny baby step that I was going to take along this path of progressive extremism. When I was ready, about a month later, I decided to excise more and more and more, and so today, after years of doing this, there's all kinds of things that I just don't eat. What we're doing is leveraging an identity that we know that people who say that they don't versus those who say I can't are much more likely to stick with their long-term goals. Because when you say I don't do something, for example, I don't eat meat, I am a vegetarian, versus, oh no thanks, I can't because I'm on a diet, you're much more likely to stick over the long term. So when you regularly review this list of, wow, look at all the things that I don't have in my life anymore, starting with candy corn, sugary drinks, whatever the case might be, these small, simple things that you've removed from your life over years, and this takes time and commitment, what you'll find is that you'll be very proud to have this entire list of things that you don't really miss anymore because you took this path of progressive extremism. So if there's one mantra that summarizes my 5 years of research into the psychology of distraction, it's this, that the antidote to impulsiveness is forethought. You see, our species has an amazing gift that no other animal on the face of the earth has, which is that we can see into the future. We can predict what is going to happen with greater fidelity than any other animal that roams the earth. And so we should use that capability, because if you wait till the last minute, you will lose. If you wait until the cigarette is lit in your hand, you're gonna smoke it. If you wait till the chocolate cake is on a fork on the way to your mouth, you're gonna eat it. If you sleep next to your cell phone every night, of course it's gonna be the first thing you pick up in the morning before you say hello to your loved one. So don't wait till the last minute. What I discovered in my 5 years of research is that people who are indistractable, they don't have a lot of willpower, they don't have a lot of self-control. What they have is a system. They plan today to make sure they don't get distracted tomorrow. By mastering the internal triggers, making time for traction, hacking back the external triggers, and preventing distraction with pacts, this is how anyone can become indistractable.